Well, I'm going to address the number of the policy that government has introduced of late, which I have are concerned to this organization. And you know that the government recently made the announcement of the introduction of a new national minimum wage. CTUSAB is not here to offer any overt criticism of that particular measure. But of course, any initiative that helps the workers of Barbados to benefit, especially those who are the most vulnerable, we are, of course, very happy to associate ourselves with it. But having said that, it's our considered opinion that in light of the obvious increase in the cost of living and trending inflation, the $2 increase could be best described as the mere minimum. The sum total of this is that the minimum wages move from $340 per week to $420 per week. And this is all based on the assumption that workers will be employed for a 40-hour week in order to get the maximum benefit. In a high-price Barbados, where food, housing, and utilities get easily exhaust the week's wage of those low-level workers, this can only be seen as a drop in the bucket. You may wish to compare the minimum wage increase in Barbados to that of Jamaica, where the national minimum wage was raised from Jamaican $15,000 for a 40-hour work week. When converted, the Jamaican minimum weekly wage amounts to US $94.14 per week, or Barbados $188.28 per week. It therefore begs the question, why in Barbados, where the government has been boasting of a bounty and a windfall, and moreover of a high-performing tourism sector, that is difficult now, therefore, to understand why a more substantial increase in the minimum wage could not have been introduced at this time. How can this be reconciled against the backdrop that Barbados has met all its targets on the IMF program, now has approximately 7 weeks of import cover, a massive windfall in payment of corporate taxes, and yet an increase in the minimum wage by $2 is the best that can be afforded? How could this be in the current circumstances be welcomed as a meaningful start? Based on the recognition of Honorable Colin Jordan, Minister of Labour, Social Security and Third Sector, and quote, that workers have to eat to support themselves and dependents, unquote. It is preponderant to think that the $2 increase in the national minimum wage could be justified. It is absurd to promulgate the view that workers stand to benefit from $2 per hour in the minimum wage based on the increase in pay to be had where overtime work applies. It is known that overtime work is not guaranteed or offered on any routine or structured basis, and hence such an assumption that there is likely to be a significant uptake in take-home pay is totally flawed. Currently, Barbados inflation forecast for 2025 has been revised upward to between 1.7 and 3.5%. The real GDP is projected to grow by 2.7% in 2025. All indications are that Barbados is poised for sustained growth. Given these projections, it is also reasonable for workers to have an expectation of receiving more favorable treatment. CTUSAB therefore supports the confidence shown by Professor of Management and Organizational Behavior, Dwayne Devonish, that Barbados stands to risk the exodus of skilled workers as a consequence of poor wages and living conditions. Information suggests that 1/5 of the Caribbean people live outside their country of origin. The possibility looms that more Barbadian workers may be drawn into seasoned job opportunities within the global marketplace, where they are attracted by better pay and working conditions. Government's announcement of a new minimum wage and the bill of a solidarity allowance in the amount of $300 to all eligible Barbadians, citizens and residents 18 years and over, who must have contributed to the National Insurance and Social Security Service within the past year. And what matters that are opposed in the main by CTUSAB. The Labour accepts that the human wage is designed to address the needs of the most vulnerable workers. However, it believes that the quantum of the increase does not bear relation to the inflationary trends and the rising costs of living. On the payment of the solidarity allowance, CTUSAB envisions that there will be difficulties experienced when it comes to some workers having to qualify for registration for the payment of the allowance. It has been well publicized by private sector trade unions that some employers have not been paying their national insurance contribution for their employees. Based on this, it can reasonably assume that some workers will be disadvantaged when it comes to qualifying and to be eligible to receive the bill. CTUSAB is amazed that government have become so immersed in the payment of a solidarity allowance without any disclosure of the quantum of money to be paid out based on its projections on the number of eligible persons to receive that $300 offer. The Congress questions how the government could embark on a monetary give-back program, while at the same time it fails to pay workers on a timely basis or monthly basis for that matter. And where workers go without receiving pay for 3 months or more. For example, some public officers are known to experience difficulty in receiving the pay of their monthly salary. Teachers are having challenges with late payments and allowances. Nurses are complaining of not receiving overtime pay and of late. The constables themselves were complaining of not receiving their salaries. CTUSAB contains that when the government believes that it has a responsibility to share the bounty that it boasts of, it also has a responsibility to address it as a matter of priority those outstanding terms and conditions which form part of the 2023-25 public sector negotiations, wages and salary negotiations. These include the reinstatement of the terms linked to teachers as a part of the conditions of service, implementing the personal accident insurance for members of the protective services, the introduction of a hazard and risk allowance for high-risk duties within these essential services, implementing flexible retirement plans and establishing a mandatory retirement age for members of protective services and nurses, implementing enhanced pension benefits for non-serving members of the protective services and healthcare professionals, providing added pay to the prison officers, and the full rollout of the interest-free car loan deposit system to assist with reliable transportation for members of the protective services and nurses. Finally, the Congress cannot ignore the fact that with the introduction of the new national minimum wage, there has been a concurrent rise in the payment of the national insurance contributions. This begs the question whether this is the case of give on one hand and take back with the other. With the current unknown millions of dollars we paid out under the solidarity allowance, the indications are that workers will inevitably, through payment of contributions into the Resilience and Regeneration Fund, enable government to recover the monies paid out. This measure, to all intents and purposes, is tantamount to government continuous policy of imposing direct and indirect taxation on the people of Barbados.